What's going on, everybody? Okay, here it is the end of yet another year in fighting games. End of the year 2022. Hopefully you guys had a good year. I want to talk about the next year of fighting games. I think next year is pretty important because last year at this same time, coincidence, I talked about what I thought the future of fighting games was, and summary because this was from stream, but basically I thought that as far as big titles, the only things you would see would be new versions of legacy IPs and IPs based off popular licenses. So examples would be things like Grand Blue Fantasy Versus over here, and DBFC. These are licenses. So the license is Dragon Ball Z in this case, and then they get that license, they make a fighting game. Grand Blue Fantasy, the phone game, so they took that license and then they made this fighting game. Where legacy stuff would be stuff like Guilty Gear Strive, right? Tekken, Street Fighter, just games that we have known about for a long time. So as far as 2022, there weren't a lot of major releases, I want to say, this year. Maybe I'm trolling a little bit. The main two in my mind here are DNF Duel, which I still own. I still own DNF Duel. Who's next? And KOF 15. But 2023 is a really big year for fighting games, I think, because it marks, in my opinion, the next generation of fighting games. I talked about in a video when Street Fighter 6 had its closed beta, and when they started showing stuff around EVO, that I tend to consider the launch of a numbered Street Fighter game as the beginning of a new era. So if you think about it, everything starts with Street Fighter 2 basically, and Street Fighter 3 they call it the Dark Ages, but Tekken and some other games were coming out during that time, so we just let them have it though. It's a cool name, right? There wasn't a Street Fighter game for a while, so that's fine. That's a pretty long era too, and it's kind of correct too in that even though fighting games were popping in one spot of the world, it wasn't so popular in other parts of the world, so that is true. And then SF4, that's when fighting games come back overall, everything starts getting really big. Street Fighter 5 is the esports era, everything has tours now and things like that. So what is to come from SF6, basically? As a side note, I generally consider Guilty Gear to come at the end of fighting game eras, right? So ACR is a little bit of a special. If you don't include ACR is a little bit weird with how it released. Correct me if I'm wrong, it released on consoles, home versions, quite a long time after its release, which is, that's some old fighting game stuff. That's classic. XX Accent Core was maybe, I want to say 2 years for SF4, and then Guilty Gear Xrd came out in 2014, right before Street Fighter 5 came out, and then Strive came out in 2021, so that's a kind of recurring theme that happens. So why is Street Fighter specifically important? Because I feel like games that come after it tend to follow a lot of the same things that Street Fighter does. I mentioned Street Fighter 5 is the esports era, so they really pushed Capcom Pro Tour and stuff. A lot of fighting games got tours at this time, just the Tekken World Tour, the Dragon Ball FighterZ World Tour, which I played 2 years in a row. Guilty Gear has, of course, Arc Revo. BlazBlue Cross Talk Battle also has Arc Revo. Xrd had Arc Revo events too. 2023, Street Fighter 6, Tekken 8, probably. Mystery NRS Fighter, probably. We say this every year. And then Project L lined up, so those are all, of course, Street Fighter 6 and Tekken and NRS, assuming let's just say Mortal Kombat. I shouldn't say NRS, but these three are all legacy IPs, so these are just the next ones of franchises we're all comfortable with and familiar with. And then Project L is the League of Legends fighter. That's a franchise we know it's being made into a fighting game, so that lines up pretty well with what I said. I don't think it's a spicy take. I'm just saying that it lines up just like that. So the only games we really know about are SF6 and Project L. We have we have played SF6. Me. Me. Lucky people have played SF6. And nobody's played Project L, but it's shown a lot of stuff. And what I think is going to be really important for the next generation of fighting games is them becoming video games overall. So what do I mean? Fighting games are multiplayer games. If you play a fighting game in an arcade, you put your money in, you sit down until someone else puts money in, and you play. So fighting games, they're made for two people to just play. Ideally in person too, not even necessarily online. Ideally in person. Online too, but ideally in person. But because of this, as time has gone on, there's some games there's games like BB, BlazBlue, for example. BlazBlue always has like 20-hour story mode and like hundreds of combo trials. There's got a bunch of missions you can do. There's a bunch of stuff you can do. But starting around like SF5, I can't speak for Tekken, but around SF5, some fighting games have been releasing just basically, here's the game, here's training mode, you fight, and there's online, and that's it. That doesn't deal with everybody who wants to play. That doesn't give the user as many options as they might want, you know? Like, not everybody wants to fight each other. Sometimes people want to fight raid bosses. There's basically no options to do things with friends. Then usually when these options become available, they don't, I feel like they don't do a good job of letting you know what's in the actual game. So for example, I got Dragon Ball FighterZ here. It's been a minute since I booted up this game. Shout out to my girl Lapcoat. So this game has a training mode. So this is where training mode is. This is like the previous generation of like public lobby, I want to say. A few games use this. Dragon Ball FighterZ, BB Cross Tag uses. There's a battle tutorial here, and this is the one that we had when the game came out. Not only is it pretty basic still, but they like it's 2022, so they still haven't changed this. I remember people asking for this to be an LMH, so it would be like easier for people to read. But nope, it's still just here's how you fire Ki Blast, and then hold, like, it's very, very, very basic. This is like absolute level, lowest basic level DBFZ. However, I don't blame them, because when this game came out, they didn't really know how people would play the game. Like, honestly, like a bunch of changes this game had was based off things that players discovered over time. So a couple of years into the game, this little dude right here appeared after one patch, and this is the Fighters Dojo. So this is the equivalent of like Guilty Gear Strive, and also Guilty Gear Xrd has this too, like the mission mode, where you can talk to characters. So I'm going to talk to, who's cool? Trunks is cool. So we're going to talk to Trunks. I can just talk to him. He's like, I used to have someone who trained me as well. Cool. And then there is way more. So remember, the tutorial is like move around, basic buttons, boom. This has all sorts of tactics here. And as you do more, you get more. You unlock more. Android 18 talks to you about opening people up. It's kind of funny too that the characters that are good at these things are the ones that teach you them, which I find a nice little touch. The main point being though that this mode, many people don't know this mode is even in the game, and this is almost some like 90s game stuff where you have to talk to a guy in the corner. This corner, actually. DBFZ is actually chock full of modes. They have the story mode here. Here's a party match mode that you can play with friends. There's replay mode. This is online mode, so this is where you do casual and ranked queue, along with a ranking. If you are interested in competitive play, you know what this is. This is just the 1v1 mode, offline mode. Then there's this Z Union, which I still don't really know what this does, but it is not a playable mode. But then there's also like a traditional arcade mode. And every now and then they have like raid bosses here too. And then they also have this thing that they quietly added that I actually done a couple of videos with people, with friends, with Jamcrofts, where there's an arena match where it's supposed to be everybody jumps in, and people didn't really use this at the beginning, but they added all these like party modes, honestly. So you can use as much meter as you want, you always have one bar, everyone dies in like one hit basically. There's 3 of the same character on one team, which normally you can't do. There's new Ultimate Battle, which is basically a whole different game with entirely different rules. So there's a lot of like fun modes here. So they added a ton of stuff since this game came out. They just never really let you know that these modes exist. The main ways I've learned about some of these, like the raid bosses, for example, is from other YouTubers. The main thing I'm expecting, basically, is I noticed with Street Fighter 6, they're way more forward with what's going to be available in the game from launch, and it's pretty robust, which I think is going to make everyone else kind of step up, and none of this like, oh, guess what, like 2.5 years later we added XYZ. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. So this is actually pretty important, because being able to play games the way that you want, I think, is pretty important. So like, for example, I'm playing Xenoblade 3, and that's a game where you can make any party member any class, any job. right? So you can really just play the game how you want. You don't have to play the game well. I have learned basically that I've used this example before, but I did not really know how to play the game for like more than half the game. But it's okay. Like the game doesn't pressure you to learn how to play it properly. Where a fighting game, because you have to play against someone else, you are encouraged to learn how to play the game. But there's some people who kind of just want to chill and vibe, and I feel like they just don't have those options, and that's actually one thing that will make fighting games just more accessible for people without actually having to change the games in ways that people don't like. Is they could just have other options for people to do besides changing the main game. As usual too, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out, happy New Year's, and thank you for all the support this year. Let's keep going.